We picked the date because the venue was available. The weather made sense. And it gave us enough time to plan without rushing. There wasn't anything symbolic about it. That came later, when my sister mentioned her Bali retreat. At first, it sounded like overlap. Just unfortunate timing. Something we could talk through. My mom said, "We'll figure it out." In that soft, reassuring way that usually meant I would be the one adjusting. I didn't respond right away. A few days later, it shifted. "Well, her deposit is non-refundable," my mom told me over the phone. "And this retreat, it's important for her. You know how much she's been looking forward to it." I did know. I also knew I had already paid deposits, signed contracts, sent invitations. Still, the conversation wasn't framed as a comparison, it was framed as flexibility. "You could move it," she added. "It's just a date." Just a date. That phrase stayed with me longer than anything else. Because it wasn't about the date. It was about the assumption behind it. That my things could move, that they were lighter, adjustable. We didn't argue. Not really. The conversations came in pieces, suggestions, then reminders. Then quiet expectations. "It would mean a lot to your sister. Family should come first. You don't want this to become something bigger than it needs to be." Each one landed softly, but together they built something solid. I thought about giving in. Not dramatically. Just practically. Changing the date. Telling myself it didn't matter, smoothing things over like I always had. But every time I imagined making the call to the venue, something in me resisted. Not loudly, not emotionally. Just steadily. So I didn't change it. I didn't announce that decision either. I just stopped engaging with the question. That's when my dad called. His voice was calm, almost measured. "If you go through with this," he said, "we won't be there." I let the silence sit for a second. Then he added, "Maybe this will teach you some humility." It wasn't said in anger. That made it heavier, "I understand," I said. And I meant it differently than he intended. After that, things became logistical. My parents didn't yell. They didn't argue. They simply stepped back. RSVP changed. A few relatives reached out, carefully neutral, asking if everything was okay. I told them it was. Planning continued, but there were gaps now. Conversations that used to include my mom didn't. Decisions I made without checking in. Vendors asking, "Will your parents be involved in this part?" In a tone that wasn't intrusive, just procedural. Each time I said no. The day came anyway. It didn't feel dramatic. It felt structured, like all weddings do, timelines, cues, people moving where they were supposed to move. There were empty seats. Not glaring, not disruptive. Just noticeable. I saw them when I walked down the aisle. I saw them again during dinner, when I caught myself turning slightly, out of habit. As if to check whether my mom had noticed something. She wasn't there to notice. The ceremony went smoothly. The reception started the way receptions do. Introductions, music, the slow build of conversation. People were kind. Present, no one asked direct questions. But the absence sat in the room, not as tension, but as context. Dinner finished. Glasses were cleared. It moved naturally toward speeches. My husband stood up. We hadn't planned anything unusual. Just the typical thank yous, a few words, something simple. He adjusted the microphone, waited a second, not for silence, but for attention. "I want to say something before we continue," he said. His voice wasn't emotional. It was steady in a way that made people listen more carefully. "Today was exactly what we wanted," he continued. "Not because everything went perfectly, but because it was honest." There was a small shift in the room. Subtle. People leaning in slightly. "We invited the people we love," he said. "And some chose not to come." He didn't look at me when he said it. He didn't need to. "I understand that people make decisions based on what matters to them," he went on. "But I also think it's important to be clear about what those decisions mean." The room had gone quiet now. Not dramatically. Just enough that you could feel the absence of background noise. "This wasn't about scheduling," he said. "It was about whether this," he gestured lightly around the room, "was worth showing up for." No one interrupted. No one reacted loudly. But something in the atmosphere shifted. Not tension. Recognition. "We're not upset," he added. "We're just aware." He stepped back slightly, like he had finished what he came to say. "And we're grateful for the people who are here," he concluded. That's enough for us. He sat down. There was a pause before the room resumed. Conversation started again, quieter at first, then gradually finding their rhythm. No one rushed to fill the gap. No one made a joke to smooth it over. It just settled. I didn't stand up. I didn't add anything. I stayed where I was, hands resting lightly in my lap, feeling something shift, not outward. Not toward the room but inward. It wasn't relief. It wasn't vindication. It was something steadier than both. For the rest of the night, people spoke to me a little differently. Not with pity. Not with curiosity, just directly. As if something unspoken had been clarified. When it was over, and the room began to empty, I noticed the seats again. Still empty. Still unchanged. But they didn't pull at me the way they had earlier. They just existed. Like everything else that had happened. On the way out, someone touched my arm lightly and said, "It was a good wedding." I nodded. It was. Not because of who came. And not because of who didn't. But because, for once, I hadn't moved something important. Just to make it easier for someone else to stay comfortable. And that felt like enough to carry forward, even if nothing else changed.